All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to Cloud Talk on this November 6th. We are joining as always on Google Plus and on Twitter, hashtag Cloud Talk. Hopefully everyone is having a wonderful week, a wonderful Thursday. Today, if you saw the video that went out a little earlier, we're going to give you a couple different options for joining the conversation here. As always, big fan of tweetchat.com for all Twitter chats. As well as I'll be posting and sharing some of the content and questions over on crowdchat.net as well, because it allows us to embed the video that you're actually watching here on there all in one screen. So you can do either one of those, and feel free to enjoy. So as always, thanks to our sponsors, both IBM and Avnet, for making this possible. Really, their attention and belief kind of in the community and educating everyone on not only cloud, but as far as technology in general, really makes this possible. As you'll notice, there's just me today from BroadSuite. Daniel Newman, my partner, is actually out on assignment today, so he won't be joining us. So I get to have our special guest, Bill, all to myself. So I actually get a guest and a friend that I've known for a long while from my previous life. As well as engaging and one of the, in my opinion, one of the best bloggers out there when it comes to technology and all sorts. So, Bill Kleyman from MTM, welcome to Cloud Talk.
Oh, Brian, it is an absolute pleasure to be here, and this topic has got me really, really excited. I've been traveling around the country talking about this stuff across the board, the whole concept of Internet of Everything, the IoT methodology. It's going to be a really fun conversation. I got a couple of props here I can share with the viewers and the listeners here as well in terms of IoT.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and it's funny. We, like I said, we'll start off there. We both were working together on a couple things. Was a big fan of a lot of the work that you were doing with data center knowledge and all of the things that you work on, not only outside of your job, full-time job, but on top of it. So, give the viewers and everyone a little background on who you are, what you're doing, and also what you do over there at MTM.
Absolutely. So I'm Bill Kleyman. I am the National Director for Strategy and Innovation. It's a really great title. Over at MTM Technologies. And MTM is a national consulting firm. We've got roughly 450, 475 employees, about 270 people in the technical force. And we are one of the nation's leading cloud technology, mobility, data center, and I say the word desktop, but it's really workspace technologies out there. We don't sell, we love to educate our users, and we really span across a broad array of technologies. Folks like IBM, Cisco, we're the largest Citrix partner in the country, huge VMware partner. We help organizations integrate private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud technologies. We do next generation application delivery, so imagine delivering full-on legacy applications to Internet of Things endpoints without using any sorts of clients. We have a very broad engineering array and a lot of different kinds of architects as well. So my role specifically at MTM is to get very technical and have those engineering conversations and make sure that those conversations are directly in line with what's happening with our customers, what's happening in the business world, what's happening with trends, and so on. We help across all verticals: oil and gas, small, medium businesses, pharma, healthcare, manufacturing, automotive. We help them understand the complexities of cloud computing, how to deliver their own applications to a cloud model, and ultimately empower the end user to utilize these tools to the best of their capabilities to make them as productive as we possibly can. Now, outside of that, as Brian was mentioning, I am an industry analyst. I write for people like InformationWeek, NetworkComputing, written for TechTarget. My work's been on Bloomberg News and Wall Street Journal. I write for Slashdot, ZDNet, CBS Interactive, and of course, one of my favorites, a data center knowledge as well. Work with Brian and IO on a couple of different cool white papers and projects as well. And I take that industry knowledge, I fuse it into what I do at work at MTM Technologies, and I help empower everybody.
Awesome. I love it. I love it also. We both not only love and have passion for what we're doing, but we both talk fast and enjoy and are geeks in our own right. So I think that part is fun because I think it allows to show our guests. It's funny I was laughing when you were saying really trying to educate on cloud, and I think that's really the theme of this this chat is really cloud. Not only is cloud confusing, but there's so many things in technology and it's always changing, and we joke that everything as a service, and AAS, they just put that on the end of everything. So educating on cloud is definitely a full-time job, and something that everyone kind of can respect and understand. So I think it's perfect for, give us a little bit background before we jump into question one on, MTM as far as, managed services go, small businesses, enterprises. How does that work with you guys?
So at MTM, we take a unique approach to the organization. We sit down and we begin asking questions truly from an architectural perspective. When we hear a pain point, it's kind of like a doctor. It's not usually just one thing, but because cloud computing and because the modern data center now touches so many aspects of the business, it's not just, hey, my application is acting slowly. It's let's take a look at your networking, let's take a look at policies, let's take a look at how you're controlling and managing these environments. So what we do from a managed services perspective is, we have a 24/7, 365 NOC. We have some of the world's largest organizations and smallest ones actually working directly with us. So imagine being able to offload your entire IT functionality, literally allowing your own IT staff to be able to perform and do the things that really help them empower their business. So instead of putting out fires, they're helping planting the seeds for the future of the business. We take the entire IT methodology and put it into a managed services perspective. So everything from image mapping, image control, updating, creating live runbooks for the organization, creating disaster recovery plans, as granular as you can make it for any organization that's potentially running an on-premises environment or even in the cloud. What we do for managed services is we take that environment on and make it a proactively healthy infrastructure. But we also always make sure to communicate with the business end of the organization to really empower the company, make sure they understand what's running in their environment and how they can continuously optimize it. Managed service isn't just about running your environment. It isn't just about saying, hey, give me your stuff, I'll take it and I'll run it for you. It's about taking that infrastructure, optimizing it, and making sure that it's potentially always proactively healthy and up and running and minimizing downtime. So we have this great impact for organizations, both large as well as small, that sometimes they just don't understand the concepts of cloud, or an environment is getting competitive, or they just need a little bit of extra help, and that's where we come in.
That's a perfect leeway there into question one, and really, we're talking Internet of Things. I know you're doing some videos that I'll make sure those links get out there as well on the Internet of Things, Internet of Things World video series that you were doing. But it was question one. We're kind of talking about, how are the users, influencing or being influenced by Internet of Things, and really, how does it play in today's business, and how is that changing? 'Cause I often, I talk about I have wearable technology, smartwatches. I have lots of gadgets in my house. But most of the time when we think of Internet of Things, I think most people assume or think of it only in the sense of the user, not with like a business and a strategy. So on that question one, what are things you're seeing? What are some changes that you see? And I love talking Internet of Things. So let's geek out to that side.
All right, well, let's get this conversation started, Brian, and definitely thank you to all the guests and wonderful folks that are joining us on this call. Where do we start? It starts with what we know already, that the modern workplace, it's not 9 to 5. It's not 9 to 5. We're no longer bound by these corporate walls and these corporate mechanisms. The users working at an office, at a customer site, within a data center, within their house, within a car. The point is that it doesn't matter. Gartner continues to report that mobile technologies and the concept of mobility, being able to deliver massive workloads down to the end user, is continuously one of the top priorities for CIOs in today's executive world. And here's something really important to understand, guys. We live in a world without boundaries. We live in a world that's primed to use mobility and the concepts of Internet of Things as a very, very distinct competitive advantage. Why? You're allowing the organization to respond dynamically to ever-changing aspects within the world, within the business world, and within the user itself. So why are things changing? And this is a really interesting concept, Brian. The impetus for BYOD and mobility and IoT actually started with the executive or CEO that bought the first iPad. When did the first iPad come out, actually? It was like 4 years ago?
5 years ago, I think. 5 years ago was the first iPad.
It seems like an eternity, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It's funny.
So the thing comes out, right, and the CEO takes it and says, you know what, I want to deliver it to 200 or 300 of my executives, and I want to make sure that they're enabled to work with it. And all of a sudden, the network or IT administrator looks at this thing, and he's like, what do I do with it? I have to help them onboard it. I have to do all these different things and concepts to it, and I'm just not ready for that. So we had to educate them around onboarding, security, and policies. Well, the modern conversation around IoT and what's really happening there has evolved much further beyond than just delivering like a email or calendar sharing down to an iPhone. It's about talking about delivering these complex applications to an ever-evolving end-user mentality. And what's happening is lawyers, doctors, associates, traditional users that were opposed to this change in technology are now handing administrators their iPhones, their iPads, and saying, I want to get my applications on here because I'm mobile. I travel between different floors in my hospital or in my manufacturing shop. I want to be able to get this information down to me. So that conversation revolves around mobility. But now we take this to a step further. The concept of Internet of Things, actual wearable devices. How is this actually impacting the business world? I've got a really cool example for you. We've got a customer, oil and gas, out on the West Coast. And they work with and operate and manage large, massive natural gas wells, huge ones across a 40, 50 square mile area. And those wells are all spread out through a different kind of region. So what they did, and this is so cool, they deployed Google Glass, right? But why? So they wrote custom scripts and programs, and they gave all their engineers Google Glasses. And what they did is they, as soon as the engineer breached the perimeter of the actual oil wells or the gas wells, the glasses would be activated, and they would say, you're here on site, engineer number 345, proceed 500 yards north, and then turn left to the appropriate oil well or gas well. He'll get to the gas well, and on the Google Glass, it'll give him instructions on what he has to do with it. He can update it right there, work with it right there, finish his job, and proceed to his next project, maybe mile, maybe 5 miles down the road, creating this type of logical efficiency. Google Glass, people said, you know what, is it going to work? Is it actually going to impact anybody? Imagine being able to traverse a 50, 60, 70 square mile area of resources, actual physical resources, being able to get there faster, more safely, and a lot more productively. Just an example of a simple little Internet of Things. I've got a couple more.
No, and that's a great one. I mean, so Google Glass, I was a Google Glass user, and I was part of the beta testing, and I don't have them anymore. But I actually, part of my problem is I'm a user, I'm a geek outside of in my life, but I actually found so much more use of them at my work. So I was working for a data center company, and we had a software that was a DCIM or data center type software, and we actually were able to push the API to our Google Glass, so that walking through these data center modules, we could actually see heat mapping and some of the notifications in our Google Glass. So I thought that was neat. Of course, Google Glass is an interesting one because I think we all had there were some great things about it. There was also some things that they're still working out, but I think that's partially being an early adapter. And I loved your example of the iPad, or when someone brings that in. I remember I'm actually wearing a Camp Liberty Iraq shirt from when I was in Iraq deploying enterprise security software. And the first time I was in Iraq, one of the first things I ever worked on was actually enabling iTunes and Facebook to work in Iraq. And people were like, what? And I was like, and it was a high-ranking official, and he wanted to be able to listen to his iTunes, and if he was out there for his second deployment in Iraq, he wanted to be able to see his kids on Facebook. So for us, it really impacted how we deployed security settings, because we really had to rethink about, like, wow, not all social media is bad. And I think of Internet of Things very much in that same way, is the users are driving the change because we want these things. I think the joke used to be, my dad used to always say it, is, you went to work because that was where the best technology was. That's where the newest fax machine was. That's where, well, that's changed. Like my iPhone has more power now than even some of the Dell devices that I worked with in my, my enterprise life. So, I really do agree and appreciate that. When you think of Internet of Things devices, bring it back a step and tell us, like, what are some of the devices that you think of when you think of Internet of Things that are impacting the business?
So that's an interesting question, and the first thing you have to understand is any business that potentially wants to get in the conversation of Internet of Things, just like any new technology, don't put both feet in the water. That's the biggest recommendation I can give you. It failed with technologies like VDI, when everyone's like, yay, VDI, and then we're like, we don't need to deploy it everywhere, just in certain use cases. It's the same concept with cloud computing. Everyone jumped into the cloud and realized that maybe some applications don't need to be living in the cloud. And the same thing about IoT. Know what technologies you want to deploy. I mean, there's the concept of Internet of Things, the concept of a thing, is literally something that connects to the cloud, the internet, to pass traffic to make your life easier. Now, I saw you point this out. I've got a Pebble here as well, right? So I actually have my Pebbles connected to my Nest thermostats here in my house, as well as my Philips Hue lighting system. So I can really mess with my dog if I want to. But, similar with that, I've got a Chromebook. I've got, all these different kinds of devices that I'm using to connect. So how does it impact the actual business? How does it actually, work with that? The concept of IoT in the modern business is really concepts around efficiency and productivity. Can this thing make my business become more effective? And I've got a funny notion around that. And when you think about a thing that connects to the internet and your business specifically, you're going to have to really think outside the box. Really think outside the box, or maybe outside the data center, or outside the cloud. I don't know. But I'll give you one example. I was at a big conference recently, and we were talking about IoT and specifically the concepts of IoE. A waste management organization. A waste management organization got into the IoT business. And you're thinking, okay, what could they possibly be connecting to the internet here? Every single garbage can and recycling bin.
Wow.
No joke, right? In a specific metro area, this company took every garbage can and every recycling bin, integrated with a small chip, a small processor that would be able to tell you if the bin was full, if the bin was malfunctioning, and it would relay that information to a custom-built software with APIs, and make sure we touch on that a little bit later, the concept of APIs and how that connects everything, connected to a central management system, which then would feed the trucks that would be scaling the neighborhood. Now, here's a really cool part. Talk about efficiency. Talk about new levels of unprecedented productivity. A truck can see where they need to potentially divert their route to be more efficient, to pick up more waste, or if a truck breaks down, another one can immediately pick up that route, or a garbage can or a large bin can say, I'm almost full or I'm getting full, or you can offload trash or recycling materials here, and you create this engine, a business engine built around things that are connected to the cloud that are autonomously, automatically feeding you precious bits of data to make your business more efficient and effective. That's how far outside the box you have to go.
Well, I think that's interesting. So, I mean, I often talk about my very random experience and life. And so I actually, out of college, took a job as a UPS driver. And I did it for a seasonal job, ended up loving it and being brought on as union, and did it for a little over a year. And one of my favorite things was, they could track where we were because we had these little, this was before iPad. So this was 2003. I was a UPS driver in 2003, and we had these devices, and they could see where we were at. But one of the biggest pet peeves was you couldn't track the packages. So I would scan the packages and know what I have on my truck. But if someone had, had put a package on the wrong truck, you wouldn't know where those packages are. And I know that's changing now. Like they're even, and for me, like I think of the Internet of Things very much in that sense, even to the point of, like you said, you have devices. I have like a quirky sensor for proximity. So this is one of the ones that I actually was using this even in the real world in my enterprise company, because I wanted to say anytime someone walked into a knock or walked into I wanted a certain video to play. Well, that's fine. You can make that happen if you press a button. But I was actually able to use this with that If This Then That app at work. And therefore, when my boss or someone else that wasn't tech savvy walked into that room, all of a sudden this video kicked off like these people were, as a grand display. And that was, leveraging the Internet of Things to really, I like how you said, the productivity angle is always impressive. But there's also the element of, you have to think new, think ways that you haven't really thought of. And I think that's a great trend. So as we're talking question 2 here, when you talk about business strategy with the cloud, with data center, that's the world that, especially you and I, were spending a lot of time in. How does the Internet of Things really affect that strategy? Because we both know that cloud is really a lot about services, and the strategy really has a big impact on how these things are utilized and how they're going to be utilized tomorrow. So how do you kind of think those two play together?
Well, let's start here. Amongst all modern technologies, the data center is really the home of everything. It's really important to understand that. The other really important thing to understand is that the amount of traffic that we actually push through the data center is going to continuously increase. Let me rattle off a couple of statistics here. So annual global IP traffic will surpass the zettabyte. That's with a Z, 1,000 exabytes basically. It'll surpass that zettabyte threshold in 2016. We've seen Global IP traffic increased more than five-fold in the past 5 years and will continue to increase threefold over the next approximately 5 years or so. As far as the concept of Internet of Everything potential impact on the cloud, globally, the data center created by the data created by IoE devices is going to reach roughly 403 zettabytes per year by 2018. That's up about 113 zettabytes per year globally. So you can see that these trends, you can't deny them. You can't question this fact. So all of this information, all of this data has to traverse something. It's got to go somewhere. It doesn't live on your device. It doesn't live on my phone, certainly. It lives in the data center. So when organizations start talking about IoT or IoE...
Hold on. You're saying the cloud lives in the data center? It's not in the ether above us? No.
Oh, man, no. It's got actual physical hard drives and CPUs, right? It's not just like, hey, there's the cloud. I wonder if my data's up there. It's going to start raining soon. But yeah, that's the concept, Brian. Everything lives and resides within the data center. So all this information, all this new technologies that we're connecting into the cloud, there we go, has to reside somewhere. So business strategy starts at the data center level. How much multi-tenancy can I deliver? How much agility does my infrastructure have? We go back to the days before server virtualization, before all that was enabled. We had one application living on one server, right? And that was a big challenge. Now we have multi-tenancy, mini racks. IBM is certainly known for deploying some really, really powerful technologies in the data center, everything from storage optimization down to the blade level. But it's all about creating that density and being able to control it. Now, there's also a lot of automation that's happening. That's a bit misconception, where IoT has to enable automation, both within the private data center and extending into the cloud. The last thing you want your administrators to be doing is working with all this information, all this data manually. It's not going to happen. There's a really fun saying, Brian, and it's to outcompute means to outcompete. So it's got to go into the concept of a data center and spanning into a cloud. So IoT, cloud computing, all of this data and all this information, it's got to start somewhere, and that's at the data center model. And that's where the business strategy actually has to start too.
So I think that's interesting. So especially for our community side and everybody that's listening, I appreciate everybody joining us on all the different platforms and solutions we're kind of working on right now. And this is just a great example. I think when you think of cloud and when you think of Internet of Things strategy, so much of that has to be about you want to create new user experiences for both your employees as well as your customers. But at the same time, it has to fit into the workflow, right? I always joke there's so many things. It's just like as many great devices, and as anytime someone asks me, what's the best software for social media, or what's your favorite app on your phone? There's lots of great apps and lots of great things, but if they don't fit in your workflow, they're not going to get utilized, and your strategy isn't going to fit that. So I think even Internet of Things is an interesting one for me because we were fighting BYOD. We're still fighting that from a security perspective and who owns what and where software goes. So now what happens when I have a device or heaven forbid I even have we both have the gadgets guys here, but I have a Raspberry Pi, and this thing has some heavy potential, and who says that someone can't do insider threat and do some damage by hiding this in a ceiling tile and can but you can't fix stupid. You can't always prevent people from doing a lot of those things. So I like that your point on we really do have to think of Internet of Things and cloud as where we're going in the future, how we're going to enable these new applications. But we also can't forget and ignore the legacy applications and really the people that are not digital natives, like ourselves. And I want to pull in a couple comments that I had from the Twitter chat community, and a lot of people were loving your out compute is to outcompete. So that's a popular quote there that I know we had from a lot of people. And then Victor Garcia had said, Internet of Things in the cloud can be used for effective real-time collaboration across multiple channels. And I was curious, when you think about that, when you think about Internet of Things and the word collaboration, because I love and have a passion for social business and the idea that I want to make people's lives easier by teaching them how to change and teaching them tech and how to collaborate. How do you think of that when you think of Internet of Things and cloud when it comes to collaboration?
Check this out. The next version of the Google car is not going to have a steering wheel. It's not going to have a steering wheel, right? It's going to have a console right in the middle of it. If you take a look at the Tesla right now, that center console, do you know what that is? Android. right?
Yep.
That's basically an Android platform. And you know where you can put on Android platforms? Stuff like applications. So imagine if your car is now all of a sudden driving itself, and through a really kind of open operating system, you can start delivering, agents and clients and different kinds of applications. So IoT absolutely does help with communication and collaboration and everything. I'm going to give you a really simple example. The simplest example I could ever give in the concept of how IoT specifically has helped me collaborate, be more social, and actually be more responsive. So I've got a great question for everybody on the call. On a given day, how many times do you check your phone? Like, how many times do you look at it? How many times do you actually, I'd say, 20, 30, maybe times. Of those, how many times is it really actually like an emergency or you really need to take a look at it? So what I do is I use my Pebble. I mean, I really do, and I get alerts and notifications on here. If I'm in a meeting, all I need to do literally is just take a look at my watch, see who's coming on, and either I answer it or I can answer it later, or I can do something along those lines. It's as simple as that all of a sudden I get 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever the case is. Instead of checking my phone, for example, I could take a look at my watch really quick and continue a conversation, continue driving, continue working with a customer or a client, and all of a sudden this small IoT device, this little Pebble watch, allows me to communicate better, be more efficient on an everyday, day-to-day business kind of perspective, and collaborate better as well. The other aspect is this: being able to deliver things like Jabber and things like ShareFile from Citrix, or any sort of collaborator or mobile iron, these data management facility tools to any kind of device, anywhere. And really what you're trying to do for the end user is make it seamless. We're talking, Brian, and everybody on the call, about all these great technologies. And the worst thing that you could do is scare the crap out of your users, right? That's the worst thing you could do. Turn them off. They hate it. As cool as your technology is, if they don't get it, if they're afraid of it, or if they're resistant to it, it'll never work. So always, IoT, you have to be thinking from an end user perspective, because you know why? IoT is driven by the end user. All of this mobile technology is driven by the demand of productivity around the end user.
No, I couldn't agree more. And actually, Mark Longbottom on Twitter said, "Simple and effective small steps. Speed and greed are not important." That's a great quote and a great way to kind of think about not only Internet of Things. And it's funny how you brought up Pebble. We had a discussion on our Twitter chat last night, T-Chat, and I was discussing with Alan. There was a bunch of people on there talking about the idea about email and productivity, and the whole conversation was about notifications. And for me, notifications are only growing. I talk about it. I bring it up all the time. I have 47 connected devices in my house, and there's only 5 of us, and my 3 kids are under 5 years old. So I mean, with 47 connected devices, and each one of these having their own notifications. For me, things like the Pebble Watch, being able to tweak and interrupt me based on what I decide. That's the problem I've always had with email, is email dings no matter if it's a spam or if it's my boss, right? And so like I've really embraced the idea of the mailbox by or is it mailbox or inbox by Google. I've been testing that out because I like that I can not only bucket how things are coming in, but I can add reminders. And I think as we get into Internet of Things, as we get into these notifications and we start talking productivity, we cannot ignore the idea that you have to teach people how to embrace these, but also teach things like how do you adjust your notifications. It's not all or nothing. I know question 3, we're going to get into security. And after doing 9 years of cybersecurity, one of my pet peeves was someone would say, "Oh my God, we had a security breach, we need to do security." And they would implement a 40-character password. Well, what did everybody do with that 40-character password? Well, before they had a 15-character password that they never changed. Now it's 40-character. Nobody can remember that. They put it on a sticky note and they stick it under their keyboard. So are we more secure now with this 40-character, or are we less secure? And I use that as a real example as I went around the Pentagon in a previous life, looking at that. So when we get into question 3 here, what's happening in cloud, Internet of Things to make, are making these more prevalent, including how are we rethinking security to make these things, actually user-friendly as well as business-friendly?
Sure. So security is an important topic, and it's definitely important to touch on that here momentarily. From a user perspective, it's all about the devices that they're using. Mobility is a big proponent of BYOD, and of course the whole concept of IoT. But the overarching mechanism here, the overarching idea around IoT and IoE, and of course mobility, how they all coincide together. And this is going to be a paradigm shift. And everybody listening and on Twitter and all that, I'm gonna propose something to you, and I bet you guys are gonna agree. The concept of a desktop, as we all know it, as we understand it, is coming to an end. There's going to be no more desktop. In fact, MTM Technologies, we always touted ourselves as saying, we're the kings of cloud, mobility, the data center and the desktop. Well, now we're kind of scratching that word out a little bit and putting workspace, because a workspace travels with you. I don't work 9 to 5. I don't work 9 to 5. I work 9 to 11. I'll take my dog for a walk. I'll come back. I'll work some more. I will, maybe sneak in a quick workout. I'll come back and I'll work some more. My work schedule revolves around the capabilities of how well my devices can deliver the work to me when I want it, when I can be productive. So that's the idea behind all of this. And the most important thing for any organization deploying mobility, BYOD, is not to ask tactical questions. Ask strategic questions, because it's not just I need to allow tablets on my network. It's how do I deliver new business models? How do I allow more mobile and more productive users? How do I understand what's actually connecting into my network? How do I protect intellectual property and confidential data? How do I provide application services to contractors as well as my own employees? How do I control multiple different types of devices? And of course, video, voice collaboration, and the delivery of legacy applications. You can never forget that kind of stuff. The beauty of it is mobility can enable that. You can work with all this as long as you think through it. Now the fun part, security. We're gonna have to talk about this for a minute.
Well, yeah, and before we get into that, I think we've had some interesting conversations going on Twitter, and Stuart Appley said the consumption of Internet of Things are making it more prevalent as wearables gain traction. Security around data will be the main concern, and I love that conversation. I was at IBM Insight last week. I've been following Dell World really closely this week, and so much is about I don't even call it a work from home anymore. I call it I work from connected devices. It's no longer working from home, because if I'm traveling, I'm still working. Even if I'm not going into my physical office at home or the physical office at a location, I'm still connected and working, and oftentimes I end up being more productive. But when we think about security and we think about the data element, for me has always been interesting, because I like to think that if we're willing to expose and be trusted on the idea that we're going to tell people what we're going to do with their data, even though we're still going to take it, that's going to help the cause. But I think that's a really good, Stuart kind of brought up a really good point there. When we think about, it used to be people were really worried about me taking a picture with my phone, right? And so they used to tell you no cameras, and I used to have a BlackBerry when I worked at the Pentagon. I actually had 3 devices. I had an iPhone first gen that was my personal one. I had a BlackBerry global phone, and I had a BlackBerry that had no camera, because we weren't allowed it in one of the rings on the Pentagon with a device that had a camera. And to me, thinking back about those days, not only was it crazy that I had 3 devices, but it made sense, because that's how they were bucketing security and protecting their assets. But security has to kind of adapt and change, because if it's all about preventing and stopping, that's where shadow IT came from to begin with, because things were taking too long to get through the CIO's office or through IT departments. So let's get into security. What are your thoughts overall on security as it's changing to embrace things like cloud and Internet of Things?
This is a tough one. And the one thing that I want to say and make sure that everyone understands is that security is an ever-evolving field, and the bad guys are sometimes a little bit ahead of the good guys. It's fascinating to see how security breaches are still impacting us. It's impactful to see that security between cloud and IoT and IoE are absolutely big concerns. The whole USB issue, right, where you can actually reprogram the chip on a USB controller to make it think that it's a WLAN controller or really anything else. That's a little bit concerning. I'm going to tell you a little bit of an anecdote and a story here, just to kind of set the tone around security here for the next few minutes. A dear friend of mine, can't say his name, can't say who he works for, white hat, was hired on by Amazon, and what he did was this. The challenge was be able to infiltrate their AWS infrastructure to see if they could embed an AMI, an Amazon machine image, in the environment to be downloaded. So what's really interesting about Amazon is they've got a community, a template community that you can pick off as a customer, and they've got a whole bunch of these pre-built AMI images. It could be a database server, it could be a web server, and you can just pick it out from the community that uploads it. So what he did is he created a secure account, all that, and actually went ahead and was able to hack and upload a AMI with a backdoor in it. Right? It was a completely safe backdoor. Obviously, didn't leak any information, but he accomplished his mission, uploaded it into the Amazon cloud, and then started seeing people download that image. 1 user, 2 users, 6 users, 10 users started downloading this image, and obviously he reported back to Amazon saying, I'm going to make it clear to you guys right now that any of those users that downloaded this image, that if I had been a malicious hacker, I would have been able to get in the back door. Done. That's it. Amazon, of course, changed their methodology, changed their Q&A method, and was able to adapt to that. That's security, right? And that's the evolution of security. Now, how does it impact IoT and IoE? Next generation security technologies are very real, and these revolve around virtual appliances, virtual servers, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, Juniper, Cisco. All of these platforms are creating next generation security technologies. But I don't want to talk acronyms because I actually want to give you an idea of what that really is. Next generation security revolves around intelligence IPS, so intrusion prevention services, intrusion detection services, and of course advanced levels of DLP capable of monitoring different network paths within your environment. Now, modern security appliances, virtual appliances, can actually sit at the edge and within your network as well. And they're able to look at specific servers, able to look at specific information, so much so that companies are now actually integrating directly into the hypervisor that supports all your virtual machines sitting on top of it. So imagine you've got a security platform that integrates via APIs directly into a hypervisor, scanning and checking all data before it actually hits your virtual machine. That's next generation security, and it's got to be adopted. So aspects of proactive logging, information correlation, being able to see as users hit your environment, as data is being transferred back and forth. There's a lot of things going on, and governance and regulations are a big, big part of the cloud security aspect as well. I'll give you a quick example. Folks like Rackspace and Amazon are actively signing things like business associate agreements to be able to pass protected healthcare information through their public cloud. I mean, that's huge. We would never be able to do that in the past. Or how about PCI DSS compliance, being able to hold federal through FedRAMP. That's a federal accredited cloud environment you can host up in Amazon. Or Rackspace with a PCI DSS commerce engine. I mean, all of this stuff is completely new because governance and regulation said, whoa, whoa, whoa. We have to give a way for some of our biggest organizations to hold and host data in the cloud. But once it's in the cloud, don't get complacent.
Well, and that's part. I think that's partially we have to change the thought process, because just because you physically can't get your hands on it doesn't mean it's not secure. Mm-hmm. I think that's always been one of my complaints, and even from the data center community, was when you move from on-prem to off-prem, and then you give up some of your services and you move to the cloud, there's definitely some security parameters and things that you can put into place. And so when you get over the fact that, hey, just because it's not in my physical hands doesn't mean that it's not secure, it's less secure. And we've had a couple people talking about Apple Pay, and I think Apple Pay is a great one for a whole bigger discussion on really how things like, just the idea of that data now. I often say, and I know Robert Scoble says it a lot too, is that, I'm willing to give up some of my data and some of my privacy for convenience and to afford me with some of the things that I really love, and I'm willing to do that on a regular basis. And for me, give it risk versus reward in everything I do, not only personally, but also in my corporate life. But I can we're getting lots of great comments. John Furrier jumps in on crowd chat. I know both you and I know John from the Cube and the Silicon Angle and the man behind crowd chat. But one of the other couple comments where I can imagine some of these people, especially if you're not used to what Internet of Things are or how cloud's changing us, it can be really overwhelming if we think of the idea that, how do I even embrace this? How do I hire people to, that can actually handle what you and I are talking about? And I loved your blog post a couple weeks ago on, the new IT person, the skill sets required. So let's talk a little bit about that. When you think about, with all this innovation, what are some of these new skill sets that people have to, not only people have to embrace, but even if you're not a tech person and you're hiring tech people, or you want to hire a consulting firm or a services company, you have to now think of these new things. So what are these new things that you're seeing as new skill sets, new ways that people are embracing this change?
So as far as hiring someone, you guys find me on LinkedIn and you send me an email and you send me a message. I'm going to help you out personally. I'm going to send you a reply back and say, this is what cloud is, this is how you secure it, and this is how you deploy it. We can do it for you. But let's talk about that. So I wrote an article for Network Computing and Information Week very recently, and I spoke about building cloud computing skills, and I spoke about three really important concepts that we'll talk about here and what we can expand on, and I'm sure we're going to get some conversation here. Number one, learn the language of the cloud. Learn the language of the cloud. And what the heck does that mean? APIs, SaaS, the Internet of Things, software-defined platforms, and much more are now these terms in the cloud dictionary. It feels like acronyms are really popping up everywhere, and they're taking over. But the reality is it's not a bad thing. Our capabilities to dynamically interconnect in the modern world is critical. So as an engineer, as an architect, as a business person, you have to know what cloud computing is. In its simplest form, and I hope you guys don't yell at me for this, it's the transmission of data over vast differences, or the presentation of this data to users over vast differences. Obviously, there's definitions that go underneath that, optimizations and user performance and so on. But that's the really, really highest level concept of it. You have to know the components of cloud computing, what's integrated inside of it, how it impacts your underlying organization and your modern infrastructure, and so on. The other one I talked about is cloud certifications. Absolutely. Cloud certs are still out there. Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, Amazon, Rackspace. There's like a place called Rackspace University, in fact, a cloud university they call it. There's the Amazon Web Services Certified Solutions Architect certification. Guys, these have weight behind them. They do have weight. But as a person who's interviewed architects and engineers in the past, please don't just get the certificate, go to an interview, and think it's going to be all okay. It's not. Be able to back it up. Don't just say, I have 15 certs, because it's going to be very, very quick when a good hiring manager or an intelligent person is going to start asking you questions about cloud architecture. As soon as you can't answer some of the simple common sense around networking, storage management, WAN optimization, and LAN control, it's going to kind of be a red flag. So,
I mean, we have one right here, and he agrees with you. Nima on Twitter said, your IT guy cannot be just a certification guy anymore. They really need to have passion for tech and gadgets, wires, and chips. And that's because I worked in cybersecurity, and I actually, part of my role was certifying the Department of Defense in CISSP, Certified Security Professional. And part of the problem was we watered down the solution by requiring everyone to have this certification. And the certification allowed you to understand the acronyms, but these people didn't understand the difference between a network firewall and a firewall that's actually on the machine. And like simple things there where the certification, yes, it's great to hang on your wall, but I'm a big fan. Like I jumped into cybersecurity with a major that was information systems, didn't really know much about it. And I credit my passion and love for social media because it actually helped me keep that job. YouTube, I mean, you said Rackspace University. I know IBM does their learning video series. I learned so much about cloud, so much about security, watching YouTube videos. And I have a friend that I talked about it on Social Selling Hour earlier this week, and he had a blog post that I loved. He said, fire all the smart people, hire all the doers, because Google's smart. And that can give me a lot of the answers that these people need. I need the people that are passionate, that want to get their hands dirty, that want to learn new things. And IT being the old realm, I think that's why the new CIO is a great conversation. The CIO of today is not the CIO of before, where they kind of got in a rut of, hey, same technology, let's not change too many things. Now they have to almost be pushing the boundary. If not, marketing and the CMO is going to be actually more innovative than the CIO is today. So I think we've had some great conversations going on. I know, especially from the idea of like certifications and skill sets. When you think of these skill sets, beyond just the technical acronyms, what are you thinking when you look at like someone's background? It's no longer just computer science and information systems. What are some of the other things that kind of fall in there?
So I'm going to start with this concept and thought, and I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit. In terms of cloud computing and what you have to know if you're trying to get yourself into the cloud field, or if you're trying to evolve your own career, follow me on this. You have to start thinking like a cloud architect, or start thinking like an architect in general. And I'll explain what that means. back in the day, right? Back in the day, like years ago, we used to work in silos. IT teams used to be in silos. There was a storage team, there was a LAN team, there was a WAN team potentially, there was a networking team, and all those guys really had their own separate functions. Occasionally they would work together and try and work together and make sure they deliver some kind of an application or a database or whatever the case might be. That's no longer the case. The leading organizations, the one that are really excelling in the marketplace right now, are utilizing technology, and the personnel they have working with them think like architects. They think outside the general box. Now, this means that a network engineer should understand the basic theories of how storage architecture works, or a storage engineer or architect should understand how application delivery works, because they might need to potentially understand IOPS, IO, or even create automated policies to put that specific application potentially on a spinning disk array or a flash array. If you silo yourself in one specific area, you will be outsourced. You're going to be outpaced. And the problem with that is there's a lot of engineers out there who have a unilateral kind of one-way vision, and that's not a bad thing. You can still be an expert in what you do. Please don't misconstrue that. We need experts and professionals, but you also need to, if you want job security in today's just. Here's one really quick side note. I used to say 2 years ago that I'm afraid to close my eyes for 2 days because of what I'll miss. Now I'm afraid to blink. That's why I drink so much coffee. But in the concepts of a cloud architect and an engineer, you have to understand at the very least the theories and the methodologies and mechanisms that help unify your data center together, from applications down to networking, down to storage, down to security. And that's how you become a successful cloud engineer or cloud architect.
On that same concept, so when we think about managed services, what does managed services role play in the Internet of Things side? I know Shona had asked that question on our Twitter chat side. I thought it's a great question. When you think about facilitating Internet of Things, or even really facilitating the cloud, new technology, how does managed services kind of play a role in that?
So managed services is a really, really interesting concept, because what was traditional managed services? Here's a server, maybe here's a desktop, right? Right. It's not the case anymore, because we might, we're getting customers that are now saying, well, Bill, we want you to manage all of our mobile devices. All right, that's fine. Let's go ahead and give us your mobile devices. Well, Bill, we also want you to manage all of our Chromebooks. All right, well, give us your Chromebooks. We'll do those too. That's fine. And the idea there is to create powerful methodologies and concepts. I don't want to give away our secret sauce here, but think of it this way. What we do effectively is that we don't actually store anything on the endpoint, right? Our idea and methodology, we've got a Chromebook here, our idea and methodology is to deliver the data that's needed by the user as quickly, as efficiently as possible, while centralizing all of it at the data center. Why does that make it easy for me? I can manage it, I can secure it, I can replicate it, I can optimize it, and I can always make sure I can control the end user delivery methodology and process. That's a general concept around IoT and mobility when it comes to data center management, managed services.
I think there's also a conversation of, if you're giving up you're relinquishing some of your control of physical data center resources, and you're giving up some, the data conversation, at IBM Insight last week was really empowering for me, because they talked about cloud, they talked about big data, they talked about engagement. And when we're talking about these devices, and we're talking about Internet of Things, and we're talking about moving our physical servers into virtualized cloud servers, part of that is really, this data is powerful, but it's more powerful if you're able to get all of this data and really filter it down. So part of that managed services conversation for me is, if I have these Internet of Things devices and I have all these things, I want things to not only work together, but I want the data, I want to be able to get the data so I can make more actionable strategies and decisions. And having them all kind of play together, I think, is a interesting future, especially when we're talking how someone procures and manages Internet of Things. I joke that it's no longer BYOD, it should be BYOT, it's bring your own things, because I think that's what we have to think about now from that perspective. So, no, I agree, and I think the managed services angle is something that I think we want to hit home on, even in more depth in a future chat, because I think there's some really things that we can dive down in there. So when you think about companies and Internet of Things devices that are really pushing the boundaries, we have about 10 minutes left. What are your overall thoughts on what companies are driving innovation there? What companies, what pieces of Internet of Things technologies really excite you from a standpoint of where this is going?
So from a management perspective, we're getting to a point, and there's technologies out there, you guys are welcome to ask me about it, where you can literally manage anything with an IP address. It could be a Rockwell Automation programming language controller or a door with an IP address. I'm not kidding. And this is a thing that's potentially connecting to the internet that, excuse me, you can actually control and potentially work with. Now, let's talk about some of the leaders here. Honestly, it could be anybody. Nest, they create an Internet of Thing. Tesla creates an Internet of Thing. I know Google is creating Internets of Things. Amazon is trying to lead the way. Cisco, IBM, all of these different organizations are beginning. GE, Whirlpool is starting to create appliances that can connect to the internet. I mean, I can't wait to get a refrigerator that's going to order milk for me. Give it to me. I want it.
I agree, and actually, I even think of that. And this actually sounds crazy, but like someone I was talking about the refrigerator idea and understanding stock. And I know at my last company, it was really great. They gave us free lunches, free snacks, free food. It was, they really built, we're focusing on, it made most of us work longer because we didn't leave for lunch. But, part of it was they actually ended up having to hire 2 or 3 people to manage inventory in this, growing company. We moved from 150 employees to 600. And one of those things is like, a refrigerator that actually would automatically order and, bring things in. We talk about the toilet paper roll that, automatically orders it from Amazon when the toilet paper's out. But those kind of things are actually very practical in the business world because today we're managing those with people. And if we're able to take these devices and automate some of these remedial tasks and some of these things that require so much, I joke about, in the data center world, before there was software, someone every hour went and checked a reading on a temperature gauge on a pipe, right? And now we have software; they see that real time in the screen. I think that's where Internet of Things devices actually kind of merge between the user world and the enterprise world. Is why not bring those in there? Why not inventory management? Why not automate some of these things that are definitely these remedial tasks? So I love the topic. We're both passionate and fast talkers about pretty much all of these Internet of Things, gadgets, devices, and we have some great conversations going on on Twitter, and most of them agree Google's an automatic one. I think Google's an interesting one. I actually like GE Quirky. I'm using the Quirky idea, and GE, I love the idea of crowdsourcing. If you're not on Kickstarter, or if those that haven't been on Kickstarter, the Kickstarter, the Internet of Things element of the Kickstarter is my favorite. There's one out there that I think everyone has probably heard about now, is like the idea that it's a powered cooler that allows you to stick a blender in it so you can take it on tailgating and so on. And to me that's like Internet of Things because it also connects to Wi-Fi so you can watch it on the TV on that. So I think as we get into these, it almost gives the little people a chance to take advantage of these devices and sensors and all of these things. So we're going to get into the final question. One of my favorite questions is we often ask our guest, every guest, about what's the craziest explanation you've heard about the cloud, or what's something that you can't believe someone actually gave it as an example. But I'm actually going to take that twofold. Cloud, like what do you, what's the craziest thing there? I know at OpenStack I had actually someone that was there that told me it was in the ether. They went into this long 8-minute discussion. I felt bad. I probably should have cut him off, but he was explaining to me where the cloud lives, not saying anything about a physical server. I was like, where does it plug in? What power do you get? But what's some of the craziest explanations or things that you've heard for Internet of Things or cloud as a whole?
So I'll give you an example of one of the silliest and craziest things that I've actually seen connecting to this an IoT methodology, as well as an explanation. I remember attending a recent conference, and I was listening to somebody, it was kind of like an open forum discussion, and he started explaining how he viewed the cloud. And he started explaining it, and what we realized very quickly is that he was describing the iCloud, the Apple iCloud, and that he felt that all of the cloud was the Apple iCloud. And after about 5-6 minutes of him explaining this, everyone in the room was like, dude, is he explaining the Apple iCloud right now? And he thinks that's all of cloud computing? And he seemed like a really nice kind of gentleman, and nobody wanted to kind of correct him. So everyone was like slowly trying to tell him that, hey, you know what, there's other cloud environments out there outside of just iCloud. It was just a funny little awkward kind of you had to be there moment.
But that's a good one. I often laugh about that too, because especially if you live in the Apple ecosystem, so many people, iCloud actually, I think actually John Furrier actually brought that up on one of the Cube conversations last week, is he actually said, like, you know, iCloud really did bring the concept of cloud mainstream. Like, I like to think, like, I love that IBM commercial. It was probably 4 Super Bowls ago where they were talking about the cloud and really what it was. And I thought that was one of the better commercials for educating the market on really what the cloud was. But, you know, iCloud being a good one is people don't really understand that. And, you know, for me, like, I use the device if this then that you know, app to send every picture I've ever tweeted into a Box account, you know, a Box.com account. And for me, that's, you know, the Box account is sitting in the cloud. But I also have a physical server here at my house that's almost like my bring your own cloud, which is, you know, something that I control. It has all of my pictures on it. It has all of my stuff on it. But I can access it. I can FTP into it from anywhere I want. All of my devices in my houses connect to it. So I think of, you know, cloud conversation. It's funny. I often hear that same thing where it's the iCloud. And, you know, one of the other ones where I thought someone said it was funny is, you know, I was driving down Phoenix and someone had on a used car, it was probably like a 98 Honda Accord, someone had on there and said this car is cloud enabled. And really what it meant was it had satellite radio. Like, because the satellite was in the cloud, it must be cloud enabled. So, you know, last couple minutes we have here, I guess, give us a little bit more about, you know, how people can get a hold of you, where, you know, you're writing, some of the things that you're doing as far as cloud, Internet of Things. Because I think this is a great discussion. I'm definitely going to have you back on. Love for you to come on with a kind of a panel discussion on all of these different tools. I think it'd be a fun conversation to have.
Absolutely. So, guys, you can find me on LinkedIn, Bill Kleyman. Find me on Twitter at QuadStack. That's QAD, then Stack. You can find me on Facebook under Bill Kleyman News and Journalism. And then you can definitely find me at MTM Technologies on MTM.com. We just put a brand new website out there. We have a really cool use case and user reference video with MOB.com and Tickets.com right on MTM.com. You can see the video, and we can tell you about what we do with them, how we enable that entire organization to do just really brilliant things. It was really cool. By all means, feel free to ask me questions. We're in this industry together to try and make everything a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, a little bit more optimized. Definitely here to help as an industry analyst, help to answer any kind of questions that you guys have. Find me anywhere on LinkedIn, Facebook, MTM.com, and I'm absolutely happy to be here, Brian. And definitely can't wait to come back. This is a great chat.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure those links go out. It's in the show notes of this YouTube video for those that are watching the video afterwards as well. And actually, part of the cool bond that you and I had, Bill, was, you know, in the early days. I say early days as if it was a long time ago, but we were both working in tech, and there wasn't very many people that were social. So, you know, I always thought it was great. You know, not only you were writing and really focusing on great content and your full-time job, but you were very social at events. And, you know, and actually, I think that's kind of how we originally kind of started having conversations, was on Twitter. And so I'll make sure that people know they can reach out to you on Twitter as well, and, you know, make sure they follow you. I have you in, you know, in my Twitter list where it's, you know, technology influencers, because I think, you know, part of this idea of what we can utilize social for is connecting with people like yourselves, understanding. And I know we've had some great people in on the Twitter chat today, kind of talking about, you know, they didn't know cloud, they don't really think about cloud, but now they're coming to this chat because they feel like they have to get educated. And I think following people like yourself and understanding, you know, all of the different aspects, you know, is a powerful thing. So I thank you, everybody, for joining on Twitter, the 30 plus or so people that were watching this live on the Hangout, and also everybody who's watching this on the replay, which will be on YouTube within the next couple of minutes. Thank you to our sponsors, IBM and Avnet, for making this all possible, for myself, Brian Fanzo at BroadSuite, my partner Daniel Newman, who will be back with us next week, who's out on assignment. With that, we will see you same channel, same time next week. And Bill, thanks again. It's a pleasure, and we will definitely do this again.
Thank you, Brian, and it was a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.